Well, I want to introduce you to Peter Coyote. I would just say personally, I've known you through your acting for a long time. You through the eyes of my 2-year-old son, I watched E.T. and was
Scared the hell out
mesmerized
of
by
him, I'll
that.
bet.
He was mesmerized as well as I was. And then you continue to provide the voice of so many powerful shows, documentaries, and different things. And I know you choose them very consciously and mindfully. But I also think the other thing that impresses me about you is when you're not speaking, the silence you have done in your spiritual practice. It is just so profound, and I can feel that sense of peace, that sense of the Buddha nature within you. So I acknowledge that part of you as well. So
You catch me on a good day.
And I appreciate all that you're doing to promote this. The YouTube videos, he's doing videos for young people, as well as some of those moderate Republicans that are on the fence, independents, to kind of walk them through that. And I think he's got a voice that people recognize immediately, and so they're drawn to that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, thanks so much. You know, can you hear me out there all right? When you're, Mr. Technology. There we go, thanks. When you're an actor, you don't have a lot of choice. You've got rent, you've got tuition, you've got retirement, you've got bills to pay, and you try to take the best of what you're offered. The only thing you can really control is the way you make the movie. In other words, you can show up on time. You can be kind to everyone. You can treat everyone the same way without status distinctions. You can be cheerful. You can contribute to a happy work environment. But you can't control the message because you didn't control the script. So I was an actor because my dad lost all his money and I was a single father, and I had to, I had to make a living. I lived in the counterculture for 10 years, from probably early 20s to early 30s. But I was always a writer, and I was always interested in communication. And after 50 years of being a Zen student and a Zen priest and a Zen teacher, I'm now trying to use things like these YouTube videos and preparing podcasts to talk about issues like this from a holistic point of view, from a point of view there's one universe and we're all in it. And Buddhists don't believe that the creator is separate from his creations. That would be a dualistic universe. The Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are dualistic religions. They believe in a God of good and a God of evil. We have Satan and we have God. But Buddhism is a little more nuanced than that. I'm not saying it's better, it's just the way we look at it. There's one kind of energy that powers the entire universe, and that energy is always expressing itself as forms. Hummingbirds, trees, leaves, peaches, mountain ranges, other cultures, other languages. And one of the things that the Christian nationalists don't really deal with is, if their idea of the Lord didn't want diversity, why'd he make all these other people? Why'd he make all these languages? Why'd he make all these colors? I mean, it can't be they were just to sweeten the pot to get things ready for the Christian nationalists. So I call these people Christian nationalists, but they're actually fascists who are disguising themselves with the roles of the prophet Jesus. I have no problem with the prophet Jesus. I once spent a weekend stuck in a motel on the desert flats in Utah. It was raining, and there was a Bible in the room, and Jesus' words were written in red ink. And it was astounding to just read the words of Jesus. There's no one of any faith who could have any problem with anything that he said. But the idea that God is male, for instance, is an unprovable assertion. The idea that when I grew up, I'm 82. I was born in 1941. And when I grew up, Jews, my people, were not white. I couldn't join the country club a block from my house. There were schools I couldn't go to. There were quotas. So I'd be playing with my friends. It'd be hot, and everybody'd say, let's go swimming. And I'd say, no, let's do something else. I can't do that with you. And they'd say, see you tomorrow. So I've had the experience. It's not great suffering, but I've had the experience of being the other. And it's not a lot of fun. And you know, black folks have had the experience of being the other, and Latinos have had the experience of being the other. Women have had the experience of being the other. When you look at it, almost everybody has been cut off from something by some kind of boundary. And so what I always wanted was to bring everybody to the party. I have much more fun when everybody's having fun. Yeah. So my problem with the Christian nationalists is not only did they want to tell me what to do and tell all y'all what to do, but they want to run everything. And when somebody says to me, we're going to make you a Christian whether you like it or not, my immediate reaction is, you might not like my reaction to that. So I'm out here trying to spread the word about it and answer questions about it. And the one thing I would like to make clear, I don't want to monopolize this because I'd like to answer questions, but y'all need to understand that this is the product of a 60-year strategy. And you have to give the Republicans credit because they have been consistently disciplined, consistently keeping their eye on the prize. They have sought power with a commensurate focus, while the Democrats are always putting out fires. Oh my God, there's little black kids going to bad school. Oh, there's LGBTQ people. Oh, there's unemployed. Oh, there's the poor. Oh, there's no health care. Republicans have kept their eye on the prize. And they started, there was a guy named Lewis Powell. And Lewis Powell in 1968 was pissed off. And he was pissed off at all the liberal protests and the way that the media and the universities and the country seemed to be just buying liberal ideas, that people were equal, men and women were equal. And he was angry, and he wrote a letter, a memorandum. You can read it online, Lewis Powell's memorandum. It's about a 40-page document he wrote to the United States Chamber of Commerce. And he said, we need to begin insisting that the business community demands fealty to the free enterprise system. And he laid out a complete blueprint, which the Republicans have followed in lockstep since 1968. And he said, we need to get the television stations to know that we are the sponsors. We expect them to celebrate the free enterprise system. We need to get the colleges and universities to know that we are donors, and they better be teaching the free enterprise system. And they began pointing to sociologists and political science teachers and pointing out that they were liberals and they had the field too long. And he gave them a recipe. You build think tanks, the Heritage Foundation. You build TV and radio stations in those think tanks. You pay your people to write books, you buy their books, you promote their books. And for instance, it's the Heritage Foundation, founded by that guy, Paul Weyrich, which has written this Project 2025. So there's a direct continuum, as these people were funded immediately by right-wing billionaires, the Koch brothers, which is the oil industry, Richard Scaife, who was the Mellon fortune, Joseph Coors. These were all people that didn't like having to pay union wages. They didn't like the costs of health and safety. They didn't like the cost of a clean environment, all impinging on their bottom line. And they just dropped below the radar, and they put hundreds of millions of dollars into this organizing system. So these Christian evangelists were given computer the most sophisticated computer programs that you can imagine. And they can go into the electorate with a granularity. First of all, everybody in this room, everybody in the United States has 5,000 data points at least about them that's known. They know where you shop, they know what you do on your cell phone, they know what your messages are, they know what your zip code is, they know the products you buy, and from that, they put together profiles of your personality, and they're for sale. They're for sale, all that data. And the people buy that data, and they run them through algorithms, and they begin to know who's most likely to look for an authoritarian leader, who is the least likely. So they begin concentrating their money in very sophisticated ways. So there was a woman there in a red blouse named Ann Nelson that was speaking quite often. And I did a Q&A with her, and she wrote a very good book called Shadow Network. She's a scholar of the beginnings of the Christian nationalist movement. She just went to a Pentecostal meeting in Michigan, one of the swing states, where 1,000 people were being trained by right-wing Pentecostal preachers as election workers to drive the devil out of politics. And they were going into the Michigan counties, into swing counties, with these computer programs and identifying voters, and they had the money to follow them up 7, 8, 10, 12 times, knock on the door. Think about it for a second. All these churches that are putting out voter guides, they're all 501c3 organizations, and they're mandated by law not to take political sides. So why are they getting tax breaks to do this? Why are we paying for them to do that? So that's all I'll say. I want people to understand that this has been going on for 60 years. These people put Reagan in office, and Reagan declared government your enemy. And Reagan brought Pat Buchanan into office. And Pat Buchanan brought in the evangelicals and the militias, and they made a deal. Give us your voters, we'll make you as rich as Croesus. And in short order, the voters were running the Republican Party, the Tea Party, and all these other souls. Newt Gingrich came in and called the Democrats evil. He was the one that injected that. And you can just go on and on. Even by the time you got to Bill Clinton, he turned the Democratic Party neoliberal, which means neoliberalism is the dominant economic policy of all these guys. And they believe that markets are sacred natural events that should never be regulated for any reason whatsoever. And you see the kind of culture that produces and the kind of disparities in income and access that produces. So all those people in the Capitol, to me, the foot soldiers for the Christian nationalists, were people who've been abandoned by both parties, urban and rural blue-collar workers who first suffered under the deregulation of banks by Reagan, $250 billion out of the economy when the savings and loan industry collapsed. And then when Jimmy Carter's Fed chair raised interest rates 5 points in a single day, all the farmers in the Midwest that had been urged to go into debt, forget what your grandfather said, go into debt, you're protected by your land values, buy heavy equipment and farm fence row to fence row. When they raised interest rates 5 points in a single day, hundreds of thousands of family farmers across this country disappeared. And with every 5 farms, you lost a local business. And the Midwest was a dead zone. What they got was crystal meth. And what they got was auctions. And they got a few crazies telling them it's not your fault, it's the Jews, it's the black helicopters, it's this. Then they got GATT and NAFTA. Then they got their jobs shipped out to countries where they don't pay living wages, where they don't have health and safety standards, where they don't have environmental costs. Gone. And finally, The Democrats and the Republicans sat on a wage freeze from 1973 to 2019. Just sat on it as an invisible gift to the corporate sector. Because what you can't forget is that our political system is organized around money. And it is controlled by money. And from the day that the Supreme Court said a political donation is an act of free speech, they threw all the advantage to capital. And when they said Citizens United would allow unlimited money, invisible money, we no longer know who owns our Congress. And this is not to say that everyone is corrupt by any means, but it's to say that every legislator has to think, if I follow my conscience, if I do what's the best for the people, will I be primaried? Will I lose my job? So while the worst of men and women just open their suitcases and take the money, the best are faced with draconian choices. So to me, the root of the problem, which most of our European countries have solved, is you have full federal funding of elections. You don't let corporations contribute to change social policy for their shareholders. And you don't allow lobbyists to give money to legislators. So the Christian nationalists have just capitalized on the despair that a neoliberal economy and an unregulated capitalism has wreaked on urban and blue-collar people. It's given them something to believe in. It's organized them. They're right, the system's rigged, but they don't know how it's rigged. So I've talked enough, but I'll take questions.
Well, I'll say a few things and then we'll go to questions. I appreciate bringing up Project 2025. The movie didn't specify it, but it is out in the public now, and there's a lot of good information about it. There was a hearing just a few weeks ago in Congress, and it was amazing how there were direct questions asked of, what was his name? Jonathan Berry, who was one of the architects, one of the writers of it. And he was very absolute about answering what was in that. There's not a hidden thing at all, but going back to Jim Crow and before civil rights laws, and Jonathan Berry even called it a great document. I mean, he's not abashed about it at all, which is amazing. So this does need to be counteracted. And I also want to acknowledge that here in Napa, we have a strong interfaith progressive group that includes this center, Congregation Beth Shalom, Napa Methodist, Napa Lutheran, Covenant Presbyterian, and several other, the Unitarians, the Quakers, several other communities that we're standing strong in support of movies like this. They're going to be part of the Interfaith Dialogue when the movie's shown in September on the 9th and 16th at Napa Valley College and up in St. Helena. So if somebody wasn't able to be here tonight, take some of those flyers that are just a half page, and it talks about the other dates, and it gives links. The sheets we have give links about buying, reserving seats. They're free. It's a free movie also. But get involved, and Wake Up Sonoma has lots of things going on. There's a lot of things, so stay involved, because that's what we need. We need it to call out for what it is. Christian nationalism is a racist movement. It's a white supremacy movement. It is not Christian at all.
Give yourself the credit for writing a very good précis of Project 2025. I guess everybody got copies here.
They did, right.
It's very well done.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen Leitner, somewhere you are here, for putting that together. Thank you. So let's go ahead and take questions now. Here, hang on. Just let me get a microphone for you.
So for you, here?
Can you turn up the two middle ones? Testing, testing.
Hello? So what is the way for you to create more communication from the blue side to the red side? Because, I'm coming from another country. I see, this country more broken of 17 years. So these people, the blue side say the red side is the devil, the red side say the blue side is the devil. So we are not going for anywhere. So, so for you, what is the way to create more communication from the blue side to the red side? Where is the middle of this to create more communication or to be one country, not two countries in one country?
Well, the way is to talk to each other. And the way is to hold public meetings where people can speak and they're listened to and they're answered. The problem is most of the mass media is privately owned. It's not actually public. And it's responsive to advertisers, and they get market share by taking a certain section of the argument and pressing it. But the short answer to what you said is being open-hearted, to realizing that every single person you meet is produced by the same universe that produced you. You could say, it's funny, in Aramaic, which was the language of Jesus, there's no article, the. So Jesus never said, I'm the Son of God. He said, I'm a Son of God. That didn't mean you weren't also. So if you're a Christian, you can realize that everybody you're speaking to is a son of God or a daughter of God. If you're a Buddhist, you can realize that everything is an expression of Buddha nature, which is the fundamental energy of the universe. So that's a long task, and if I do my job well, you'll like the way it looks and feels, and you'll model it, and that way it gets multiplied. Dealing with kindness, dealing with respect. You say, oh, okay, I like that. I'll try to do it that way. That's the only thing I know, I mean, Chile, you had a disaster.
Yeah.
You had the military, you killed a great leader, and for years the country was under a fascist dictator with American neoliberals creating his economy. The Chicago School, Milton Friedman and these guys went to work for Pinochet, who was cutting the hands off students and shooting them in stadiums. So we don't want to, I'm not trying to foster anger. I'm trying to foster dialogue. So is Jay, and we're going with churches and rabbis and communities to try to find like-minded people to just be firm in their beliefs and to say, we'll be generous, but we're not going to give you the authority over us.
I got you right here. Thank you. So in the 1960s, there was a lot of movement by churches to march with us for civil rights and human rights. And I'm just wondering if in the process of working on this film, if you came across or heard of any kind of movement going on in the non-evangelical churches to try to counteract some of this.
So, I come into films like this after they're made. I'm the guy that reads the stuff on the paper. I would like to see, I would have felt more comfortable in the last 4 years had I heard more churches and religious institutions speaking out against the bombast and the dog whistle racism and the misogyny and all of that. And I was a little shocked. And even in Napa, I've run into some people who were afraid to show this movie because it seemed too political. And, so this is where courage is called upon. These people are right. You do have to take a stand. It doesn't have to be a stand of anger. It doesn't have to be a stand of exclusion, but you have to. I had a great friend who died last year. His name's David Harris. Used to be married to Joan Baez, and he's a wonderful moral thinker and writer, and he has a great phrase, which is, values that are not expressed in action don't exist. So unless you're acting on your beliefs, they don't exist. People don't know. So I think we can all do more. I wish the American religious community would do more, but they may be doing a lot that I don't know about. So I'm not going to stand in judgment of them. Is that it? Did I put you all to sleep? Wait, yeah.
I wonder if you could repeat that again. I think it's pretty pivotal when you said something about the article "the" in Aramaic.
Yeah. This is
This
something
is pretty critical.
I learned from a biblical scholar, that they don't have the article "the." They have the article "a." So Buddhism has the same kind of difficulty, but Jesus couldn't have said, it's just like ancient Hebrew didn't have a word for virgin. The word that they translated as virgin and decided on in the 3rd century at the Council of Nicaea, when all the Christian sects were getting their story together, that word actually meant young unmarried woman. So in Aramaic, Jesus didn't say, I am the Son of God. He might have said, I am a son of God, which is something I'm sure we can all agree with here.
That would apply to I am the way, the light, the way of the
Yeah.
truth. So I'm a way,
Yeah.
a light.
I just wanted to say it was a very thought-provoking film. And it seems as though the calling themselves Christian nationalists gives all Christians a bad name. And people that aren't Christian don't want to talk to anybody that has any beliefs in that regard. So it just seems like it's even more divisive, that it paints Christians with that broad brush.
Well, I think their intention is to be divisive.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, you're saying, why don't Christians stand up at the churches and all that? It's sort of like, well, even your best friends don't want, make jokes about it. If you're a Christian and you have a friend who isn't of that belief, or I'm just saying, it's like, who wants to be ridiculed?
Well, yes, who wants to be ridiculed? But I think there are greater issues than our personal comfort.
Oh, there is.
I'm not blaming that on you. I'm just saying, when I'm uncomfortable, I think, okay, that's my little personality. He's got his feelings hurt. But what's really at stake here?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's so divisive, even within people who love each other unconditionally.
I understand. Well, so from my understanding,
Yeah.
because I have a lot of friends and cranky people. I lived with the Hells Angels for years. I mean, it's not a place for philosophical arguments. But still, I found a way to say what I had to say respectfully of other people, not trying to make them wrong. It's like the earth is mysterious and the universe is beyond our understanding. And whatever made me, made hummingbirds and ocelots, and made billions of other humans with different belief systems and language. And if they're, when you think about it, not to really kill myself here, but God is a word. It's a word, and we don't want to confuse the map with the territory. And there are infinite numbers of words, or there are as many words for God as there are languages, which is the prime mover or the creator, Wakantanka. So if all those words have the same definition, they all mean the same thing. And so to get in the quibble, no, I'm not lecturing you, but
You don't have to convince me.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, how do you talk to other people?
well, it makes it easier for me
Yeah.
to understand that when people say this, what they mean.
Yeah.
The reason that I don't consider Christian nationalists Christians or an actual religion, they're just using the religion as foot soldiers for political power, and they say so.
Yeah. Taliban.
They what?
They call
Yeah, I-
themselves the Taliban, American Taliban.
American Taliban.
And I will say that there are churches here, not all of them, but churches here are standing up. I know Crosswalk Community Church has been showing this film among their community, and several pastors, Mary Lee Schaefer at the Methodist Church, and Pete Shaw, and Rabbi Niles, several people are going to be part of the discussions in September as well. So we have people standing up for that, which is good.
This is a more practical question, I think, not quite the theoretical question that you were maybe answering before, but can you tell us a little bit about who made the film, who's behind the film, who's sponsoring, who's paying to distribute it, a little bit about the movement to get the film across the country at this
Yes.
time?
If I was not 82, I would remember the name of the man that made it. But what? Stephen what? Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's close, but anyway, this was made by somebody who was motivated by the intention to spread the knowledge. The film is being paid for by all of us. They've put the film out for sale. They make it as reasonable as they can, and those of us that want to show it figure out ways to get copies that are appropriate for your TV. You can see the film on Amazon Prime. You can see it on YouTube for 99 cents, and they're doing everything that they can to disseminate it. It's not a traditional for-profit distribution, and they're working with us. My wife negotiated a bargain for the 2 showings in St. Helena and Napa. So they have certain constraints. It costs a lot to make a movie. I mean, you don't make an hour documentary for less than $1 million. And so they have investors that have to recoup, but they're not proceeding as if their fundamental intention is to make money.
Thank you. One of the saddest things to me is the manipulation that has been done to the people who are part of the Christian movement. They believe so fervently in the misinformation that's been put forward and how these, violence is a good thing if it's in the cause of, the enemy and all this kind of stuff. And it's such a well thought out, methodical process that they've been led down this path. And I just wonder if you think that there is anything that could help them shift at some point, or, many of us, when we've become invested in a way of thinking, can't see evidence to the contrary. And I just wonder, is this going to be a permanent divide in our country between people, because they have been so indoctrinated and believe completely. I mean, it's obvious from the things that many of them say that they truly believe in what they're doing, including tearing down the government, that it's a good thing. Do you think there's any hope that something could help shift their perspective about that?
Well, I do. I practice something I call radical optimism. And I do this because there's not always evidence for optimism, or there's not always evidence for much beyond hope. But radical optimism is based on one fact that you can't argue with, which is we never know how things are going to turn out. Last week we didn't know that Kamala was going to be like livening up the party, and just making everybody cheerful and driving Donald Trump off the television. So we don't know how things are going to turn out. So given that fact, it's better for me to make myself powerful, which means cheerful, relaxed, happy, and keep my shoulder to the wheel for what I believe in. And if I do that, maybe it's only as much of a chance as winning the lottery, but there's a chance. If I don't buy a lottery ticket, there's no chance that I'm going to win. So it's just as in actions, there's an equal odds that things could go badly or go well. The onus on you is to always make yourself take the choice that makes you the most powerful, that makes you feel the most expressive and the most full and the most capable of going on. It's like a mental trick. The other thing is to remember is that the universe includes everything. It's 50% positive and 50% negative. These people have always been here. And if you listen to Rachel Maddow's Ultra podcast, you'll see that during World War II, there were members of Congress that were pro-Nazi. They were breaking up trials of traitors. I mean, there's always been this strain here. So I have faith actually in a kind of deep keel of okayness in the American people, like a fair shake. I know that we're not good people. I know that we're human beings, and human beings have the full spectrum of the universe within us. And this is why we have to be careful, because we are dangerous puppies. I can be Hitler, or I can be Mother Teresa. I can be Martin Luther King, or I can be one of those guys. And as Buddhists, we're fully aware of this, and we spend our time being mindful to make sure that our negative capacities don't get past our teeth or don't get activated into our muscles. And if you think you're the good guys, you've already expunged the shadow sides of your nature and put them on people you consider the enemy. It's the good guys that dropped bombs on hotels in Baghdad in the middle of the night, killing men, women, and children in their beds because our leader didn't like their leader. But if you ask those people, who were the terrorists?
Right.
So I try to remember that I'm a dangerous animal, and that unless I'm minding the store, unless I'm keeping myself on top of my anger and my envy and my jealousy and all those other human characteristics, I'm going to be making stuff bad. So we're the problem we're trying to solve, always. And the trick is, how do we proceed to our goal in a way that doesn't create the problems that we think we're solving? How do we, and this is as true for Christians, how do you manifest love to people that think differently than you do, that have contrary values? How can you accept that they have an equal right to exist and that they had very different experiences than you did, which led them to those conclusions? So I spend a lot of time asking questions.
Good question.
Why do you feel that way? Do you actually feel this and this and this? There was a great, there's a women's group in Illinois called Red Wine and Blue. Do you all know about it? Yeah. This woman was a Washington operative, and she had to move to Illinois, and she started having red wine parties with a whole bunch of women. And any kind of Republicans, Democrat, trumpets, whatever, they just got together and they talked. And a lot of the women had voted for Trump and they regretted it, but they were still included in this group. It was a safe place to say that. And one time, Donald Trump came on the television and he was aiming at the suburbs and he was saying, Cory Booker's going to be coming to your neighborhood, and he's going to be moving into your neighborhood, and he's going to be doing this. And these women from Red Wine and Blue said, Cory Booker's coming? Where's my lipstick? Oh my God, get my high heels, man. You know, it's like,
Exactly.
people will always surprise you.
Was there another question over here?
Yeah.
I have one, but you answered it.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question and a personal experience with what you're talking about. The question is, and Reverend Jay and I have talked about this, we were not designed as a Christian nation. The founding fathers were not Christian.
That's right. They were deists.
They were deists. So their basic premise, pretty shaky, isn't it?
Well, we do have the right to insist on the truth. Like when Boebert says, you know, this church and state stuff, it's not in the Constitution. It is in the Constitution. You know, it is, it's there.
It's really
Right. And Washington, I don't know if they were all deists, but I know that Washington was, Jefferson was, and Madison was. And they said, we believe in God, but they were not necessarily followers of Christ. But they designed a system where they could believe as they believed, and the Quakers could believe as they believed, and the German immigrants could believe, and the Jews could believe. And that just seems to be a much happier prescription
It's always
than
better.
these puppies.
Yeah, I quite agree. My personal experience is with my brother, and I wonder how many of us in our families are divided. So my brother is a bicyclist, and he was on his way across the country, and the bike broke down. So he was close to me, and he called and said, "Can I bunk with you while my bike gets fixed?" I said, "Of course, I'd love to have you." So he was with me for 2 weeks, and he's a trumper. Through and
Bless you.
through. Yeah. So after the 2 weeks was up and the bike was fixed, he took off again on Saturday. Tuesday, I get a call. He's just had a bad tumble outside of Sacramento, and would I like a roommate for another week while he and his bike both heal? I said, "Sure, where should I pick you up?" So I brought him back. But it has been a real experience on, if I can't talk about politics and what's going on, I feel like I'm really zipped up. I really like talking about it, and I like dialogue, and I don't mind different opinions if it's a dialogue. He is not used to that approach. Let me say that. I bring something up, and he is defensive and walks away. Oh, something about stop the steal. He believes that. I said, how about the 61 court cases that found no fraud? I don't believe it, and stomps off. So I said, oh, that frontal approach will not work. Then I remembered hearing a psychologist that I thought gave excellent advice. She said, you don't want to argue with them. You don't want to debate with them. You don't want to fight where it's a win-lose. It just strengthens their belief system, and it strengthens yours. You're not going to change each other's mind. So what you want to do, their family, close friends, neighbors that you value, the relationship is more important. So you continue building good memories with them. So when they find out they've been bamboozled, they've got a bridge back.
That's the long view.
Isn't it? Well, I'm practicing that with my brother. So I found a few things that we can agree on. We agree on homelessness as a real major moral issue. Great.
Yeah.
And then we can find things that we can laugh about. You know, just that it's just funny life. So
Is he younger or older?
He's 80, and he's 7 years younger than I am.
Uh-huh.
So I'm saying, number one, is the universe trying to tell you something with these two episodes with both your bike and now the left side of your face is mushed up?
Do you know why he believes like what happened?
He's from Iowa.
Uh-huh. I
And,
went to school in Iowa.
okay, somehow it's just very red, and all his family is the same way. I said, have you talked with your daughters about the abortion issue? Oh, no. So I get that they don't really, and I invited him here tonight for this movie. He said, oh, my shoulders really bother me. I said, okay. I asked him 2 or 3 times, and he didn't want to. He isn't interested in the facts. So I'm not going to waste my.
Well, we'll take one more question, and then we'd like to make a few announcements. So go
I
ahead,
just
Grace.
wanted to say something,
Oh.
if somebody else.
Grace had her hand up.
It's more of a comment than a question. That I really like your approach to ask questions, because in a conversation, it's like, it can be, this is my position, well, this is my position, well, this is my position. But if you engage them in a thought process, and they engage you in a thought process, you might find there was some flaw in the thought process, and there you have a conversation.
You know, it's kind of like psychiatry. When you're talking to a psychiatrist, sometimes a day will come, you'll hear yourself say something, and you'll go, oh my God, that's horse shit. Oh my. And you hear it yourself, you know? And so if you're asking, how do you know that? Well, somebody told you, but how do you know that they know? I'm not
Exactly.
arguing. I just like to know, like, what's pinned down. And I think that, you know, I think that it's, the reason I think that these are really old disappointments is because the arguments are not based on fact. They're based on resentment. They're based on anger. They're based on disappointment. They're based on betrayal. Look, imagine that you've been waiting in line in the post office, or you've been waiting in line for the American dream, and you've been waiting there for 50 years. And all of a sudden, there are people cutting in line ahead of you. There's black people cutting in line. There's Mexican people cutting in line. Because in a meritocracy, when people actually have talent, and if you're not going to have a caste system, people are going to rise. And so those people that have been standing in line for all these years, they've had a free ride because being white used to be the ticket. And that game is not working anymore. And so, Jesus, God, if there's no caste system, I could be winding up on the bottom. And it's making them frightened, and it's making them desperate. And there's no difference between, don't think about race for a second, just think about caste. There is no difference between the Indian caste system and our caste system. In India, the untouchables are not allowed to swim in the same pools as the arhats. They have to walk 12 feet behind them. And, you know, it's not based on race. They're the same race. It's caste. And read Isabel Wilkerson's book called Caste, and you'll understand a lot of the fear and anger and despair of white people who suddenly can't count on whiteness as the basis of privilege. And they don't have education. They don't necessarily have skill sets. What are they going to do? And the rug's being pulled out from under them.
Yeah. Last comment, Mary? Did you? Oh, one more question.
I really appreciate that point that you just made. I'm curious about J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy, because I do believe that in that book it actually addressed some of these issues, not of caste, but of poverty, pharmaceutical, that type of thing. And
Yeah, but did you read the book carefully? Because what he does is he blames the Scotch-English gene or the Scotch-Irish gene. I mean, it's a piece of nerve to take the poverty of these people in coal country, where they were forbidden to unionize, where the strikers were machine gunned by the Rockefellers, where mountains have been blown up, where the environment has been desecrated, and to blame it on the Scotch-Irish gene. You know, somebody said the other day, you know, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and the guy said, I don't have boots. So I think J.D. Vance is the darling of the Republicans precisely because he's blaming the victims.
And he didn't even grow up there. He grew up in Ohio. Yeah. There's a lot of false things about that. Yeah. So last thing, because we do
Yeah, I
want to
just
wrap things
wanted
up.
to say recently, I just have really been trying to watch my languaging, and it's kind of been touched on here and there and stuff. And I think people that follow Trump are MAGAs. They're MAGA Republicans, and then there are Republicans. And so I'm trying not to lump everybody together. You know, I think.
Christians too.
And the Christians, and so we really have to be careful. That's how I'm feeling lately, that we just really need to live in grace and not lump them together and allow them to have, to be able to save face and come in a different direction. But if we just keep on, oh, those Republicans, it's not helping. It's not helping. It's the MAGAs, and the MAGAs, AKA Christian nationalists.
Well, and also, I mean, in fairness, the MAGAs had a concerted practice of driving moderates out of the Republican Party.
Yeah,
That was their idea was to take it over, and they did.
yeah.
And I mean, yes, I can't blame people for being frightened of being primaried, but at some point, I expect public servants to stand up and
And-
express what they believe in.
Yeah, and do the right thing.
But it's also based on loyalty, because Liz Cheney is no moderate. I mean, she's
Yeah, yeah, no,
But we love her.
exactly.
okay, so the sheets you got in when you came in, they've got some links on them. I will also send these out to the list because then it'll be hot links. But it gives some sites that will be updated with events going on. It gives certain action items. And I was going to have Kathleen just talk for a moment. Mary or Michelle, can you bring up the microphone to Kathleen? And make sure the light's on, make sure you didn't turn it off. And then she runs a group that writes postcards, and I think this is a really powerful way because there's also a thing in California where our vote's pretty well going to go one way, but we can begin to send, to do some action from our own homes in those swing states. So go ahead and Kathleen, kind of talk about what the work you're doing.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to read this, a quote from Albert Einstein here. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them and do nothing. So there's a lot of things we can do. And there's, first of all, there's the Focus for Democracy. They're going to have a meeting. It's a webinar on Sunday at 5 o'clock. Information's on here.
I'm co-hosting that.
Oh, okay, great. I'll see you there. Okay. Some people would like to phone bank. Some like to text. Some people like to knock on doors. You can get information from the local Democratic Party here. I started a group called Napa Postcard Posse. And we're not a formal group. We're just a bunch of people that like to write postcards. And we get out the vote. We encourage people to vote for their representatives in House and in the Senate. So we are focusing on the battleground states and also districts here in California that we can flip. So we find that postcards, people will read postcards, maybe not letters, but if a postcard comes, they'll flip it over and we highlight the candidate's name or the dates of a primary or websites to go to. So we provide the postcards and you provide the stamps, postage stamps, and I can give you names and addresses that we get through Activate America, and you just write as many as you like. There's 20. Right on. I tell them right with a W, right on, and so I collect the counts of people that they want, how many pages they want at the end of the month for the following month. So I have a deadline of Sunday for all the postcards that go out in August. So if you want to join us, I think my address is on here, my email address, and join the Napa Postcard Posse if you like to write.
And Wake Up Sonoma has a protest, a peaceful protest against Project 2025 on Sunday in the Sonoma Square. I think it's 4 to 6. The information's on there. And then there's another event in September, I think it is, but all that. They're a very active group. And then also we on our website, the Center for Spiritual Living, will have links to certain things also. And there's always vote.org and League of Women's Voters if you want to be active in getting people to register. My understanding is there has been a huge number of people registering to vote all of a sudden in the last week. There's been a lot of movement, and it's really great to hear that, young voters in particular.
Can I say one thing about protests?
Yes.
I'd like to say just one thing about protests. I was asked to go to Harvard a couple of years ago and teach something called the Theater of Protest, which I worked out because I got tired of seeing protests turn into right-wing campaign videos. And I just wanted, what I learned from teaching that course was just a couple things I wanted to share. The first thing is it's really important to know who a protest is directed at. It's never directed at the politicians. It's never directed at your enemies. The only audience for any protest is the American people who are trying to make up their minds who they can trust. And if you win their trust, you'll win them at the ballot box and you'll win. And if you don't win their trust, you won't. And so there's a couple ways to win trust. One is, in any demonstration, appoint some proctors and give them a whistle and a yellow vest. And their only job is to look for violence or misbehavior. And when they see it, they blow the whistle and the protesters sit down and let the police take out their anger at the people who are wrecking storefronts or being unruly. The second one is dress like you're going to church. It's really hard to be defined as a gangster if you're dressed nicely and neatly and you're behaving yourself. Third, make your protest silent. Hold signs and show the audience your self-discipline, that you can be quiet. Because a protest is an invitation to a better world. And it's a ceremony. And nobody accepts an invitation when they're being shouted at. And finally, go home at nighttime. Come back the next day. And if you do that, the American people will learn that you're never going to embarrass them. When I was young and we were morally outraged about the Vietnam War, we misbehaved so badly that the United States elected Richard Nixon, and then Reagan, and then George Bush. And we refused to vote for Hubert Humphrey because he was, like Biden, a moderate Democrat. And so we got Nixon, and we got 20 years of right-wing policies, deregulation of banks, anti-woman, anti-environment. It's really important to remember life is not a single-issue event. And we've got to win the people over, and we do that by our behavior and our discipline.
I just want to thank Peter and Laura and everyone who helped put this together, and Reverend Jay, and especially because this is a free event, and the other events that are coming to the community are free. And I didn't notice when I came in, but I hope that there's a basket out there so that if we want to, we can contribute to help offset the costs of these kinds of gatherings and allow the center to help continue to bring these things together.
And we want to bring more movies to here, and we will let you know about that. The people that registered for tickets, we won't put you on our general list unless you want to be, but just a movie list and kind of a social action on that. So we'll put a basket out. If you feel so moved to support other movies, that would be great. And thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. It's good to see some of you. It's been a while seeing you, so blessing.